Two candidates, two different policy positions. We've got the records and the facts. We've sorted through all the mess and propaganda. Let's talk about Harris, Trump, and immigration. Now, I've talked about this issue ad nauseum for a year. I've spoken extensively about this subject. It is a complicated issue, but it's easily understandable, in my opinion. My guess is, if you consider yourself moderate on the issue, you want to help these migrants who seem to be coming to the United States for a better life. But you agree with conservative Americans who think they should come through the proper channels instead of illegally entering the U.S. through our porous southern border. If you're liberal or a leftist, then you view America as a big tent. You echo the lines of the new Colossus. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. Well, first, let's take a look at this data from Pew Research, which shows the monthly migrant encounters by U.S. Border Patrol at the U.S.-Mexico border from the year 2000 to December 2023. When you look at the right third of the chart, President Trump had record low border encounters two times in his administration. It hit a record low during the pandemic. Then in January 2021, there was truly an explosion in migrant encounters. And you have to understand what this is demonstrating. This isn't talking about asylum seekers and people trying to immigrate legally. This chart is demonstrating border apprehensions and expulsions. In December of 2023, these illegal, also known as criminal, encounters reached a record high of almost 250,000 just in the month of December. It was 250,000 in December. So since January of 2021, there have been millions of these interactions. Homeland Security reports that we're on track to have 10 million encounters under the Biden administration by the end of 2024. But the Biden administration also created a mass parole program called CHNV, the initials there meaning Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, which serves to preemptively admit hundreds of thousands of migrants, admit them into the United States for up to 2 years. What happens after that? Well, they can apply for asylum or visas or go back to their home country. So Customs and Border Patrol created an app called CBP One, and migrants can use the app to schedule an appointment for an interview at a U.S. port of entry. They can also use the app to submit their information and their documents to be considered for parole, so they can't just show up at the border. Now, guess how many appointments have been scheduled through the CBP app? Just guess a number. 591,000. Just since January of 2023. 591,000. Now look at this. This is from the House Committee on Homeland Security. Nearly 96% of those have been released into the United States. You also see reported there that over 27,000 Chinese nationals were encountered, meaning they were apprehended and sent away. 27,000, trying to come in between ports of entry. They also report, as a part of the CHNV parole program, that 434,000 plus Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans have been mass paroled since the program began under Biden and Harris. Those are people that we know are here. But you have to wonder how effective the vetting process is, given the news that's emerging from all over the country in the past few years. Additionally, the committee reports nearly 2 million gotaways, which are people who are detected by CBP, but they evade apprehension and successfully enter the country. 2 million. In this year alone, CBP has arrested more than 21,000 people with criminal convictions or outstanding warrants. Remember that, because we'll come back to that in a moment. More than 21,000 convicted criminals. Since Biden and Harris have been in office, CBP has apprehended 362 people on the terror watch list at the southern border. As in, these are people in a database of terrorists, and here they are trying to come into the United States. I'm sure for our theme parks and the Grand Canyon. Now let's hit the pause button for a second. America is a nation of immigrants. We are literally a collection of people with global ancestral origins and roots who came together on the same mass of land for the ideas espoused in our founding: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why so many people want to come to the United States of America. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. Immigration is not wrong or inherently evil. Mass migration can be. Mass illegal migration absolutely is wrong. And let me tell you why. If you pay attention, you'll notice this is what's happening all around the world, in different parts of the world. So, an influx of undocumented migrants, as we've had in the U.S. for 3.5 years, creates a massive, massive strain on public services like healthcare, education, and social services. Why? Because when suddenly a whole lot of people are using public services that aren't paying taxes, it's a fast, destructive strain on local, state, and federal budgets. They cannot, by law, be denied emergency services, regardless of paying for them or not, which then costs healthcare providers and, just by volume, overcrowds the system. Emergency rooms and hospitals become overcrowded. Public schools struggle to keep up in accommodating non-English speaking students. And any teacher will tell you that larger classes are harder to work with, meaning more kids get less of an education because the teacher doesn't have time. You also have millions of people who are suddenly looking for work, but they can't speak the language, and it's next to impossible for them to get a job legally because they're here illegally. They do, however, integrate into manual labor jobs, which drives down wages and displaces American workers. This is what Donald Trump meant when he said they're taking black jobs. And in the debate, he clarified blacks and Hispanics.
On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast.
He's saying that millions that are here illegally are taking jobs away from the millions that are here legally because employers can pay them significantly lower wages, leaving Americans with nothing. What's more, they have to find somewhere to live. So there's suddenly a massive demand for low-income, affordable housing. Again, that then drives up the cost of rent and leaves Americans looking for a place to live. We're talking about the millions that are in the U.S. unlawfully, unauthorized, undocumented, and unknown. Now, the other part of that clip is Trump's allusion to what he calls migrant crime and the alleged origin of said crime, that certain countries are emptying their prisons and insane asylums in order to export them to the United States. To most people, especially liberals and possibly a majority of moderates, the story seems outlandish, like a scare tactic, but let's consider some of the things that have actually been reported and documented. Here's what we know. Number one, as part of the CHNV parole program, more than 434,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans have been mass paroled since the program began under Biden and Harris. Second, one of those paroled Venezuelans was Jose Ibarra, who murdered 22-year-old Laken Riley at the University of Georgia. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. Third, Renzo Mendoza Montes, a 32-year-old Venezuelan man, was arrested in February for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in Campbell County, Virginia. Fourth, a Venezuelan prison gang, Tren de Aragua, which means train from Aragua, Venezuela, has erupted into a multinational migrant crime syndicate, drugs, human trafficking, prostitution, etc., and is the subject of more than 100 police investigations across the country. New York, Chicago, Florida, Texas, and Colorado, just to name a few. The last of which is where Aurora, Colorado police have arrested at least 10 of those Venezuelan gang members associated with theft and forcibly taking over a hotel. And that's just one city. In New York, they've committed more than 60 robberies, and they were charged with aggravated robbery after dragging a 60-year-old woman down the sidewalk and slamming her into a pole. And fifth, 2 years ago, Breitbart reported the following story. A recent Department of Homeland Security intelligence report received by the Border Patrol instructs agents to look for Venezuelan inmates. The report, reviewed by Breitbart Texas, indicates the Venezuelan government, under the leadership of Nicolas Maduro Moros, is purposefully freeing inmates, including some convicted of murder, rape, and extortion. The report does not state whether the released prison inmates were traveling as a cohesive group, but does state it was commonly shared knowledge among migrants traveling to the United States within a caravan in July 2022 that many of the Venezuelan migrants in the group were convicts and included hardened criminals. The report does not specify that the release of the convicts, understanding they would head to the United States, could be a purposeful geopolitical move specifically intended to impact U.S. national security. The source says the task of identifying Venezuelans who have criminal records in their home country is nearly impossible. One of thousands of Venezuelan migrants surrendering along the U.S.-Mexico border daily, most, according to the source, are being released into the United States. Without effective diplomatic relations with Venezuela, the source says access to criminal databases in that country simply does not exist. All of this perfectly culminates in Springfield, Ohio. Listen, we'll get to the pets thing, but there's much more going on here. Over the last few years, since the creation of the CHNV parole program, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 Haitians were mass paroled to Springfield, Ohio. But look at this infographic from Pew Research. There have been more than 150,000 Haitians granted temporary protective status, mass paroled into the United States. So that means there's 13% of this group taking up residence in Springfield, Ohio. But why Haitians, though? Why are they a part of this mass parole program? Well, because Haiti has been highly unstable for a few years. There's social unrest, there are gangs of violent criminals and literal cannibals running the place. Severe poverty, so they're granted temporary protective status through CHNV, and they're allowed into the country under the guise of asylum. Earlier, though, you heard me say that this is temporary, as in 18 to 24 months. But the Biden-Harris administration keeps extending their stay. So you've heard me say what happens when there's sudden mass migration, legally or illegally. Look at what's happening in Springfield. Take a look at this from Reuters. Benefits rolls swell in Springfield. New arrivals of Haitian origin have pushed up benefit rolls for federally funded programs like Medicaid. So you can see there, prior to April of 2022, there were less than 500 Springfield residents qualified for Medicaid. But by July of this year, there's been a 1,500% increase. What does that mean? It means that there are suddenly a lot of people drawing from our federally funded, taxpayer-funded medical programs without any recompense. Medicaid is just one program. They also need food stamps and cash. That by itself is inflationary. But let's continue. Here's the unemployment charting, also from Reuters. The three different colors represent the unemployment trends in Springfield, Dayton, Ohio, and then nationally. The green line is Springfield, which you can see unemployment has almost doubled since the spring of 2023. This is because migrants need work, and greedy employers can pay them less than the average native worker. This drives wages down and unemployment up. And again, we're only talking about one city in America. We're only talking about 15 to 20,000 people out of millions. So just apply this across the country, multiply the numbers, and consider the national implications. Reuters also reports that from May 2022 to the end of 2023, Springfield rent prices were among the fastest increases in the nation. Take a look. Data from Zillow show rents increasing faster in Springfield, Ohio than the rest of the U.S. as a surge of new immigrants pushed up demand for apartments, though the pace has slowed. So you can see over this 2-year period, rent prices in Springfield are up almost 130%. Why is that? Because suddenly demand for housing goes way up. And then the simple economics of supply and demand inevitably kicks in. Unfortunately, for Americans living in Springfield, they also have to pay the higher prices. The factor that's not reflected in the chart are the vouchers given to these Haitian migrants to afford rent. That is, again, inflationary. Take a look at wages in Springfield. Look at the green line. You can see how the three lines follow similar trends, but pay attention to the green line representing Springfield. Over the course of 5 years, from 2019 to 2024, wages are down. And they're way down from 2 years ago. So just to recap, in Springfield, we have a 1,500% increase in Medicaid enrollment, rising unemployment, rent prices are up, wages are down, and all of it is directly attributable to the CHNV program of mass paroling these 15 to 20,000 Haitian people to Springfield, Ohio. One of the best ways you can help our show, other than by sharing today's content, is by picking up some We the Free merch at WeTheFreeShow.com. You can be the salt and light you were meant to be by wearing the Salt and Light shirt or by sipping your coffee from the Salt and Light mug, or you can sport the God Bless America shirt and the We the Free Crest tee. We've got stickers and a Smells Like Freedom candle, so check out our merch today at WeTheFreeShow.com. This is what no one is talking about. Donald Trump is not talking about this. Republicans are not talking about this. The mainstream media is, of course, silent about this. Why? Because it pulls the curtain back on a massive problem, a ticking time bomb, and it explains many of the economic issues we face as Americans. The problem is most people would unfortunately find what I'm saying to you as incredibly boring. They don't care. So therein lies the political strategy of both of the major parties. The leftists and the Democrats are deflecting and minimizing the issue, but Republicans are helping them by fixating on a specific problem that they think will get the point across. Something that's juicy enough to generate headlines.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
That was one of the 4 or 5 fact-check moments in the debate, none of which were for Kamala Harris. David Muir said that ABC reached out to the Springfield city manager, and he told them exactly what they wanted to hear. He told them there were no credible reports of such claims. Trump basically responds saying, well, we're seeing it. We're hearing about it. We're seeing the pictures and the videos and the testimonies like this.
I'm riding on the trail going to my orientation for my job today, and I see a group of Haitian people. There was about 4 of them. They all had geese in their hand. They got away. I couldn't make out the first 3 of the license plate, but I got the numbers. The last numbers was 9898, and it was a gray Toyota Tacoma they took off on. There was about 4 of them. There was 2 men, 2 women.
These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They're running into... they flipping cars in the middle of the street. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them like...
There's been a lot of allegations of animals going missing, ducks being basically
yes, sir.
taken.
There's pictures of that, too.
Can you speak on that? Have you ever seen that in person?
The only thing I've seen, I did see a pig's head laying down in Snyder Park.
You saw a pig's head?
A pig's head.
Like it had been cut off? Or?
Yes, sir.
What did you do? Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile over the Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with it.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
You call the Humane Society, see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's deceased.
I'm angry that foreigners are using up the resources that were set up for the Americans that reside here. I'm angry that another country's flag was being flown in our city. I'm angry when I see our businesses and recreational areas littered with garbage left by people that do not know or understand our laws and culture and are making no attempt to learn about them. And let me be clear, this is not about race. This is about people being given the privilege of coming here from another country and having no respect for our people, our land, or our life's work. People living their life here the way they did in Haiti, angry, stealing, polluting, living in filth, and acting like animals. These are not civilized people. Opening containers in our grocery stores, helping themselves to what's inside and throwing the rest onto the shelves and floors. Pulling off of the highway to publicly clean and gut the roadkill lying there in front of anyone that passes by. Stealing animals from farmers and leaving their severed heads at the side of an old school where children play. Relieving themselves in public, making some barbaric stew out of the birds that live in our park. This is insanity, and it has to stop.
Folks, those are just the highlights. You want more? I can give you more. And all of those are Springfield residents. I could probably show you an hour of that stuff. And it's not funny. Not in the least. It's actually quite sad in one sense and infuriating in another. You see, the mass parole and the skirting of the legal immigration process bypasses assimilation in one sense. They have no civics education. They have to choose to learn English, but that has to be provided by the community. They can't possibly know how to live as Americans when they've only ever been impoverished Haitians. Somebody has to teach them and integrate them, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. The sad part about the story is when you consider the reason these things are even happening. Why are they eating public animals and domestic pets? Is it because of their heritage with voodoo? Are these deliberate acts of evil? Or is it because they're hungry and they're resorting to desperate measures in order to feed themselves? Okay, let me ask you this. Why are the mainstream media and Democratic elites gaslighting the issue? Because it's a manifestation of the larger issue. Springfield is one place. Springfield is temporarily home to 20,000 migrants from one country. There's millions more from numerous countries across the fruited plains. On average, we take in about 1 million immigrants a year, legally. Since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been in office, that number has nearly tripled, especially when you consider legal immigration, temporary protective status, asylum, CHNV mass parole, and illegal migration altogether. The truth is that most Americans can feel this problem. We know the problem is there. The problem did not blow up like it has until Biden and Harris took office. You could literally see that on the chart, the encounters chart that I showed you earlier. During the debate, however, Kamala Harris was asked, why did the administration wait until 6 months to act on immigration? And would you have done anything differently? She didn't answer the question. She talked about being a prosecutor in California and claimed to have supported a bill which Republicans didn't support, which would have added 1,500 more CBP agents. In other words, she blamed Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress for these problems. The problem with that answer is that she, number one, neglects to take any responsibility for creating this problem through their terrible immigration policy. Secondly, they created the systems to expedite the importation of millions of foreign persons outside the legal process. And three, all they needed to do was enforce long-standing law, not draft new legislation, which would not have even scratched the surface of the issue. And President Trump's time in office proves that. You know, politicians have a habit of creating problems and then shifting the blame and then preserving their power by proposing solutions to the very problems they created. What have Biden and Harris done since January of 2021? They terminated the Remain in Mexico policy, that was Trump's policy, which required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their immigration cases were being processed. Secondly, they ended the public charge rule, which denied green cards to immigrants who were likely to depend on public programs like food stamps and Medicaid. They lifted travel bans. They reversed Trump's asylum restrictions. They rescinded Trump's executive order to keep undocumented immigrants from being counted in the census. They raised Trump's refugee cap. They terminated construction of the border wall. They have unconstitutionally admitted over 1 million asylum seekers into our country. And you're seeing the civil, cultural, political, and economical effects of it all. They take no accountability for that. But instead, they blame Donald Trump and the congressional Republicans. The strange thing this time, however, is that they propose no solutions. Trump's solution is to use the National Guard and local police forces in addition to CBP to enact mass deportations. I'm sure he would reenact all of the immigration policies of his first term, but he also had a recommendation for Biden and Harris during the debate. Watch.
And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal.
The President of the United States has the legal authority to control who may enter the country by Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act. He or she is allowed to restrict entry to any foreign national if it is detrimental to the United States. They both used this act during the pandemic to limit travel. In a national emergency, the President of the United States can legally declare an emergency to deploy resources, including the military, to enforce closures and restrictions at the border. This is how President Trump funded the construction of the southern border wall. So he's right when he describes their authority to put an end to what has been described as an invasion right now. But why do they not? Why don't they? Why not take desperate measures to remove the millions that are unlawfully residing in our country? Why not conclude the mass parole programs, or at least cap admissions, as the Trump administration did? Why not consider the terrible impact this has had on so many Americans in numerous states and cities across the country? Well, Trump has an idea of why this is the case.
We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
In July, every single Democrat in the House of Representatives opposed the SAVE Act, which would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Now, why would they do that? In June, I did an episode titled How to Steal the 2024 Election, in which I covered an extensive research project on non-citizen voter registration and participation, which concluded that an estimated 2 million non-citizens will vote in this year's election. This was all based on census data and electoral data and registration data. Why would they do that? In May, I did an extensive segment about Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven's Marxist-styled social strategy, which is being theoretically implemented in numerous political arenas in modern American life. It is the strategy of political revolution through societal collapse by orchestrated chaos. It's a flooding of the system with impossible demands, unpayable debt, and unfettered immigration, among other things, to push our society into crisis and economic collapse. Last September, I spent nearly an hour explaining Latino critical theory, hatched from the same liberal academics who created critical race theory, the scholarship which is infamously known today as replacement theory. No, it's not a conservative idea. That's more gaslighting from the media. Its roots trace all the way back to the Frankfurt School and the father of communism himself, Karl Marx. Now, I'm not suggesting that Democrats and leftists are going door to door in Caracas inviting people to the United States. I'm not implying that liberals are passing out golden tickets in Puerto La Cruz. Never let a crisis go to waste. You know who said that? President Obama's Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel. If you've realized nothing in the last 27 minutes, what's crystal clear is that if the immigration and the ensuing humanitarian crises are organic, the Democratic Party is capitalizing on its disruptive, revolutionary potential. Thanks for watching today. Listen, I want to make sure that you stay informed on the news and the biblical response to it. So do yourself and us a favor and hit the subscribe button before you go. And then we would love for you to check out WeTheFreeShow.com to grab yourself some merch to spread the word about We The Free. And we're also going to put a video on the screen right now that we think you'll like. Now, go and be that salt and light, and we'll see you next time.